Welcome back to the High Court Report, your one-stop shop for Supreme Court coverage. Today, we come to you to break down the January 14th, 2026 Supreme Court opinion in Barrett versus United States. We previewed this episode and delivered oral arguments. Listen to those episodes if you want to learn more about this case. In this decision, the Supreme Court ruled that a single act violating both 18 U.S.C. and yields only one criminal conviction. The case resolved a circuit split over whether Congress intended for these overlapping firearms provisions to trigger cumulative punishments. Justice Jackson's majority opinion applied the Blockberger presumption, finding no clear legislative intent to authorize multiple convictions for the same offense. This ruling prevents prosecutors from stacking convictions when a firearm-related crime results in death. Before going further, here's your reminder to follow, rate, subscribe, share, and review the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you podcast. Follow on LinkedIn to written rundowns. Just search the High Court Report. And if you have questions about this case, reach out via LinkedIn or email, scotus.cases.pod@gmail.com. All right, let's proceed. Dwayne Barrett found himself at the center of a legal puzzle that would eventually reach the Supreme Court. Between August 2011 and January 2012, Barrett participated in a series of robberies. During one of these robberies, Barrett's accomplice shot and killed a victim named Gamar Defala. This single tragic act triggered multiple federal charges that created the legal dilemma the court needed to resolve. The government charged Barrett under two different federal firearms statutes for essentially the same conduct. First, they hit him with using a firearm during a crime of violence under Section 924 C1AI. That carries a 5-year mandatory minimum sentence. Second, they charged him under Section 924J, which kicks in when someone dies during a 924C violation and allows for much harsher penalties, including life in prison or even the death penalty. Here's where things get legally messy. Both charges stem from the exact same shooting incident. The question becomes, can the government convict Barrett under both statutes for one act that violates both provisions? Or does the Constitution's Double Jeopardy Clause, which protects people from getting punished twice for the same offense, prevent this kind of double prosecution? The legal framework courts used to answer this question comes from a 1932 case called Blockberger. The Blockberger test asks whether two criminal provisions define the same offense by looking at their elements. If each law requires proof of something the other doesn't, they count as different offenses. But if one offense contains all the elements of another, making it a lesser included offense, then you've got a double jeopardy problem. Barrett's case took a winding path through the court system. Initially, he received a 90-year sentence. After a 2019 Supreme Court decision in United States versus Davis knocked out one of his convictions, he got resentenced to 50 years. Then in 2023, another Supreme Court case called Laura versus United States changed the legal landscape again, prompting Barrett to appeal once more. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals ruled against Barrett, holding that he could face conviction and sentencing under both firearm statutes. This created what lawyers call a circuit split, different federal appeals courts reaching different conclusions on the same legal question. That's exactly the kind of disagreement the Supreme Court steps in to resolve. Writing for the majority, Justice Jackson focused on a crucial distinction that emerged during oral arguments. The case wasn't really about whether sentences can run consecutively. It was about whether the government can obtain two separate convictions in the first place. This distinction proved decisive. The court applied what they call the Blockberger presumption, the idea that Congress ordinarily doesn't intend to punish the same offense under two different statutes. everyone agreed that sections 924C and 924J define the same offense under the Blockberger test, making this a classic lesser included offense situation. What really caught the majority's attention was how Congress wrote these statutes. When Congress wants to authorize multiple punishments for related offenses, it knows exactly how to say so. The court found crystal clear language elsewhere in Section 924, where Congress used phrases like in addition to when it wanted to stack penalties. For example, Section 924C, 1, explicitly mandates conviction in addition to the underlying predicate offense. Section 924C, 5, requires conviction in addition to other specified violations. But when it comes to the relationship between subsections C and J, Congress remained silent about authorizing dual convictions. And the government argued that Section 924C's consecutive sentence requirement demonstrated congressional intent for dual punishment. The court rejected this reasoning, explaining that requiring consecutive sentences doesn't automatically authorize multiple convictions for the same offense. By a majority vote, the court held that Congress did not clearly authorize convictions under both sections 924 C1AI and 924J for a single act that violates both provisions. And therefore, one act that violates both provisions can generate only one conviction, not two. The voting breakdown showed Justice Jackson writing the majority opinion, joined fully by Chief Justice Roberts and Justices Sotomayor and Kagan. The remaining justices joined most parts of her opinion, but not all sections. Justice Gorsuch filed a separate opinion concurring in part, agreeing with the result, but wanting to explore deeper constitutional questions. Gorsuch highlighted tensions in the court's double jeopardy doctrine, particularly around how it applies differently in concurrent versus successive prosecutions. Gorsuch suggested the court might eventually need to resolve whether the Double Jeopardy Clause means different things when prosecutors bring charges together versus bringing them separately. He viewed Barrett's case as highlighting these unresolved constitutional tensions that will require future attention. This decision forces prosecutors to make strategic choices. When someone commits a fatal firearms offense, prosecutors must choose between pursuing the basic 924C conviction with its mandatory minimum or going for the enhanced 924J charge with its potentially harsher but more flexible penalties. They can't have both. The ruling also resolves confusion among federal courts about how to handle these overlapping firearm statutes. Lower courts now have clear guidance that absent explicit congressional authorization, defendants cannot face multiple convictions for what amounts to the same criminal conduct. Barrett versus United States represents another chapter in the ongoing evolution of double jeopardy doctrine. While the court resolved the immediate statutory question, Justice Gorsuch's concurrence suggests broader constitutional questions about multiple punishments remain unresolved. The decision reinforces the principle that criminal defendants deserve clear protection against successive punishment for the same offense, even when Congress creates different penalty schemes for enhanced versions of similar crimes. The case demonstrates how technical legal distinctions, like the difference between authorizing multiple convictions versus regulating how sentences run, can have profound real-world consequences for defendants facing serious federal charges. Thanks for listening to today's High Court Report episode. Remember, please follow, rate, subscribe, share, and review the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you podcast. Follow on LinkedIn to written rundowns. Just search the High Court Report. And if you have questions about this case, reach out via LinkedIn or email scotus.cases.pod@gmail.com.